For nearly a decade, Ethiopia made it illegal to export the seeds of one particular grain. Not the flour, not the bread made from it, the seeds themselves. Governments rarely go that far unless something has real strategic value. In this case, the crop in question feeds millions of people every single year, grows in soil conditions that would cripple most cereals, and matures faster than almost any grain most gardeners have ever heard of. What makes this crop so unusual is how efficiently it converts time and space into food. While wheat can sit in the ground for 4 months and corn can take 90 days or more to reach maturity, this grain can move from seed to harvest in as little as 30 to 50 days, depending on temperature. That kind of speed changes how a grower thinks about productivity. Instead of dedicating a bed to a single crop for an entire season, the same piece of soil can produce multiple grain harvests while vegetables rotate through other beds. Another detail that surprises growers the first time they see it is the size of the seed. The seeds are so small that roughly 150 weigh about the same as a single wheat kernel. When scattered across a garden bed, they almost disappear into the soil's surface. Yet those tiny seeds produce a dense stand of plants that look more like ornamental grasses than a traditional grain crop. When the seed heads form, they create a fine cloud of branching stems that eventually dry and release thousands of tiny grains. This is one reason Ethiopian farmers have protected this crop so carefully for generations. When a plant grows reliably in marginal soil, tolerates both drought and heavy rain, and produces grain extremely quickly, it becomes more than just another crop. It becomes insurance. Insurance against failed harvests, unpredictable weather, and poor soil conditions that would wipe out most other cereals. The grain behind all of this is teff, one of the oldest cultivated crops in Africa and the foundation of traditional Ethiopian bread known as injera. Once growers understand how teff behaves in soil, they often realize it fits surprisingly well into small-scale garden systems, especially for people trying to produce more calories from limited space. Before planting teff, the first step worth taking is checking the condition of the soil itself. Teff tolerates poor soil better than many grains, but it still performs best when the soil pH sits roughly between 5.5 and 7.0. Within that range, nutrients like nitrogen, calcium, and iron remain available to the plant roots. If soil drifts outside that range, growth can slow even when compost and fertilizer are present. A quick way to measure this is with a simple probe like the IRTOV 4-in-1 soil tester. The tool measures pH, soil moisture, light exposure, and nutrient levels directly in the ground. Running that test before planting prevents a common mistake where gardeners blame slow growth on watering or fertilizer when the real issue is soil chemistry. The link to that soil tester is in the description if you want to see the exact tool used. Once soil conditions look good, building microbial life in the bed will noticeably improve how fast teff establishes itself. Although the plant tolerates poor soil, it responds strongly to organic matter and living microbes. One of the simplest ways to build that biology is by turning everyday kitchen scraps into compost and compost tea. Many gardeners keep those scraps in a small, sealed container like the EPICA Countertop compost bin kitchen before moving them to a compost pile or brewing compost tea. The stainless steel body and charcoal filter trap odors so vegetable peels, fruit skins, coffee grounds and eggshells can sit inside for several days without creating smells in the kitchen. Over time, those scraps become compost-rich in microbes, which eventually feed soil life in the garden beds. If you want to see the compost bin mentioned here, the link is also in the description. When that compost is ready, turning part of it into compost tea is one of the fastest ways to wake up soil biology. A simple mixture works well. 1 shovel of finished compost placed in a bucket with about 5 parts water and left to steep for roughly 24 hours. Stirring occasionally helps release microbes into the liquid. Once strained, the tea can be applied directly to garden beds where teff will be planted. Many growers use a pump sprayer like the Chapin Pump Sprayer to distribute the liquid evenly across the soil surface and around seedlings. The fine spray helps coat soil particles with beneficial microbes, which improves nutrient cycling and root activity. Planting teff itself is surprisingly simple. Because the seeds are extremely small, they should not be buried deeply. Most experienced growers simply broadcast the seeds across the soil surface and gently press them into the top quarter-inch of soil. A light watering settles the seeds into place. In raised beds measuring about 4 by 8 feet, a tablespoon of seed is often enough to create a dense stand of plants. Within about a week, fine grass-like shoots begin appearing across the bed. At this stage, teff looks almost identical to lawn grass, which sometimes confuses new growers. But as the plants grow taller, the stems begin branching and forming delicate seed heads that look almost like clouds hovering above the bed. These seed heads eventually turn golden as they dry. Because teff grows quickly, water management becomes important during the first 2 weeks. The soil should stay consistently moist but not waterlogged while roots establish. After that early stage, the plants become surprisingly resilient and tolerate dry periods better than many vegetable crops. Harvesting teff requires patience more than equipment. Once the seed heads dry completely, the stems can be cut and laid out on a tarp or cloth. Rubbing the seed heads between hands or gently beating them against the surface releases thousands of tiny grains. The chaff can then be separated by lightly pouring the mixture in front of a fan or natural breeze, which carries away the lighter plant material while the heavier grains fall back onto the surface. For gardeners focused on producing real food rather than just decorative beds, this type of crop changes the conversation about what a garden can produce. A fast-growing grain that tolerates difficult soil conditions adds resilience to a growing system in ways vegetables alone cannot. If this kind of practical, experience-driven gardening knowledge is useful, subscribe to Hydrohaven and share the video with someone who grows their own food. The more gardeners understand how to work with soil, microbes and resilient crops, the easier it becomes to grow healthier food in smaller spaces.